The Whispers of the Void. Engineer Captain Vega Reeves moved through the service tunnels of the Constellation with practiced ease, her tools clanking softly against her utility belt. 20 years of service on research vessels had taught her to navigate the innards of starships better than the hallways of her childhood home. The Constellation wasn't the newest ship in the Terran exploration fleet, but Vega kept it running with a mixture of expertise, improvisation, and occasional tough love. Captain Reeves, came Commander Dominic Pascal's voice through her comm unit, we're picking up something unusual on long-range scanners. Could you report to the bridge? Vega sighed, tightening the final bolt on the thermal regulator she'd been fixing. On my way, Commander. The bridge of the Constellation was a semicircular room dominated by a panoramic viewport that currently displayed the swirling gases of an uncharted nebula. The ship had been mapping this region for 3 weeks, cataloging stellar phenomena and collecting data that would be analyzed by scientists back on Earth. What have we got? Vega asked, stepping onto the bridge. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid and smudges of lubricant marked her face and hands. Commander Pascal, a tall man with close-cropped silver hair and dark skin, gestured toward the viewport. Something small moving erratically, not natural debris. Dr. Elian Frost, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from his console with barely contained excitement. It's giving off unusual energy signatures, could be artificial. A probe, Vega suggested, moving closer to the viewport. Too large, replied Pascal, and its trajectory suggests damage, it's tumbling. Vega studied the readouts on the nearest console. A vessel then, should I prep the recovery team? Pascal nodded, if it's damaged, it may be in distress. Standard protocols apply quarantine procedures, full decontamination. And if there's someone aboard, asked Dr. Frost. Pascal's expression remained neutral. Then we'll have first contact protocols to consider as well. 2 hours later, Vega stood in the hangar bay as the recovery team's shuttle returned with the mysterious object secured in its cargo hold. It was smaller than she'd expected, no larger than a personal shuttle, with an iridescent hull that seemed to shift colors under the hangar lights. Its design was unlike anything in human records, organic curves interspersed with geometric patterns that seemed to serve no obvious functional purpose. The vessel bore obvious damage. Parts of the hull were scorched, and one section appeared to have been breached and hastily sealed. Life signs? Vega asked, not taking her eyes off the alien craft. Technician Orion Wells, a specialist in xenotechnology, checked his scanner. One, faint but stable, definitely not human. Let's crack it open, Vega said, pulling on a protective suit, carefully. It took them nearly an hour to figure out the entry mechanism. The ship's design logic was fundamentally different from human engineering principles. Eventually, they located what appeared to be an emergency release, and the upper section of the hull separated with a soft hiss. Inside, curled in what must have been the pilot's chair, was a small figure. Vega immediately thought, they appeared adolescent, with delicate limbs and skin the color of burnished copper. 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, remained closed, and fine, filament-like appendages that might have been hair or sensory organs framed a face that was eerily humanoid despite its alien features. Med teams, Vega called, keeping her voice calm. We've got a survivor. The alien was transported to the medical bay under strict quarantine protocols. Dr. Naomi Zhang, the Constellation's chief medical officer, reported that while the physiology was completely unknown, the alien's vital functions appeared to be stabilizing. The patient is in a state similar to hibernation, Dr. Zhang explained to the assembled senior staff, but it's showing signs of increased brain activity. I believe it will regain consciousness soon. Any indication of what species it might be? Commander Pascal asked. Dr. Frost shook his head. Nothing that matches our databases. This is a first contact situation. What about the vessel? Pascal turned to Vega. Severely damaged, she replied. The propulsion system is unlike anything I've seen before. It's not conventional thrust or even antimatter drive. It's as if the ship somehow folds space around itself. Can it be repaired? Vega hesitated. I don't know. I'd need to understand the principles it operates on first. Captain Reeves, Dr. Zhang's voice came through the comm system. Our patient is waking up. You might want to come down here. When Vega arrived at the medical bay, the alien was sitting upright on the diagnostic bed, all 4 eyes open and alert. They were a striking violet color that seemed to glow from within. The alien regarded Vega with what appeared to be curiosity rather than fear. Hello, Vega said, keeping her voice gentle. My name is Vega Reeves. You're aboard the Terran research vessel Constellation. We found your ship damaged and brought you aboard. The alien tilted their head, the filaments around their face rippling slightly. Then, to Vega's astonishment, they spoke, not in any recognizable language, but in a series of melodic tones and clicks that somehow conveyed meaning directly into Vega's mind. Gratitude safe now name Nix. Vega blinked startled. Did you just how are you doing that? Mindspeak limited efforts. Dr. Zhang looked between them confused. Captain, what's happening? They're communicating directly with me somehow, Vega explained, not taking her eyes off the alien off Nix. Some kind of telepathy. Not telepathy, translation, neural interface. Can you tell us what happened to your ship? Vega asked. Nix's filaments drooped slightly. Pursued, escaped, damaged in flight, found refuge here. Pursued by whom? Instead of answering, Nix reached into a fold of the strange, shimmering material they wore and withdrew a small object. It was roughly the size of Vega's palm, cylindrical with intricate patterns etched into its surface. As Nix held it out, it began to emit a soft blue glow. Resonance key must protect, must deliver. Vega hesitated before accepting the object. It was surprisingly warm to the touch and seemed to vibrate slightly, as if containing immense energy. What is a resonance key? Who are you delivering it to? Voidborn seek it, must not obtain, would bring imbalance. Voidborn. Nix's four eyes blinked in unison, and Vega felt a sudden chill of foreboding through their strange connection. Ancient, powerful, merciless. Over the next few days, Vega divided her time between working on Nix's damaged vessel and learning more about their unexpected guest. Nix's ability to communicate improved rapidly as they adjusted to human neurological patterns, though the process clearly exhausted them. Vega learned that Nix belonged to a species called the Lumina, beings who had evolved in a system with unusual radiation patterns that had led to their neural communication abilities. The resonance key was an artifact of immense importance, not a weapon, Nix insisted, but a tool for navigation through what they called the layers of reality. The Voidborn Collective was a vast civilization that had expanded through multiple star systems, absorbing or eliminating other species they encountered. They sought the resonance key to access regions of space previously beyond their reach. Why you? Vega asked one afternoon as she worked on the alien vessel's propulsion system with Nix observing nearby. Why were you chosen to carry the key? Not chosen, born carrying. Genetic memory, only Lumina youth can attune to key. Vega paused, looking up from her work. You're saying only adolescents of your species can use this thing? Yes, adult minds too fixed, young minds flexible can navigate keys whispers. And where were you taking it? To the nexus point where realities converge to reset balance. Whatever that meant, it sounded important. Vega resumed her work, fitting together components that shouldn't logically connect, but somehow did when assembled in the precise configuration Nix had shown her. The ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Reeves to the bridge immediately. Something in Commander Pascal's tone made Vega's stomach tighten. On my way, she replied, setting down her tools. To Nix, she said, stay here. On the bridge, the atmosphere was tense. Commander Pascal stood rigid before the main viewport, his face grim. We're receiving a transmission, he said without preamble. It's broadcasting on all frequencies in multiple languages including ours. What does it say? Pascal nodded to Communications Officer Tara Willis, who activated the playback. A voice filled the bridge deep, resonant, and distinctly inhuman. Attention, vessel of unknown origin. You have interfered in matters beyond your comprehension. You harbor a fugitive of the Voidborn Collective along with property vital to our interests. Surrender the Lumina and the resonance key immediately or face eradication. You have one planetary rotation to comply. Silence fell over the bridge. Vega felt her heart hammering in her chest. There's more, Pascal said quietly. Long-range scanners detected movement at the edge of the system. The main display shifted to show a sensor reading of multiple massive objects, moving toward their position at incredible speed. How many? Vega asked. At least 20 vessels, replied Tactical Officer Georgian Reed, each one approximately 30 times the size of the constellation. Their energy signatures are off the charts. Vega thought of Nix, so young and vulnerable, and of the small device that apparently warranted the attention of an armada. Commander, she said, I think we need to run. Pascal shook his head. They'd overtake us in minutes. No, Captain Reeves, we need something better than running. A plan? Vega asked. A miracle, Pascal replied, his eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. And perhaps your new friend can help us find one. The sensor display updated, showing the armada's progress. The Voidborn Collective was coming and the constellation and everyone aboard her stood directly in their path. The cosmic bargain. The bridge of the constellation had never seemed so small. Tactical displays showed the Voidborn fleet's relentless approach, 20 massive vessels arranged in a formation that would cut off any possible escape route. Each ship dwarfed the constellation, their hulls composed of a material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light, creating the impression of mobile voids cutting through space. "They'll be within weapons range in 43 minutes, Tactical Officer Reed announced, his voice unnaturally steady. Commander Pascal turned to Vega. "I need options, Captain Reeves." Before she could respond, the bridge doors slid open and Nyx entered, moving with the fluid grace characteristic of the Lumina. Despite Dr. Zhang's protests about quarantine protocols, Pascal had granted Nyx limited access to the ship, once it became clear they posed no biological threat to the crew. "They will not negotiate," Nyx communicated, the mental impression tinged with a deep sorrow. The Voidborn believe themselves above diplomacy with lesser species. "Lesser species," Officer Reed scoffed, "charming." "We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with," Pascal said, gesturing for Nyx to join them at the central console. "Tell us about the Voidborn Collective. What do they want with this resonance key?" Nyx's filaments rippled in what Vega had come to recognize as discomfort. The Voidborn are ancient. They evolved in the spaces between stars in the darkness of the void. They do not perceive reality as most species do. The resonance key is one of 7 artifacts created by the architects, beings who existed before recorded time. Together, the keys maintain the equilibrium between different layers of spacetime. "And the Voidborn want to disrupt this equilibrium?" Dr. Frost asked, fascinated despite the danger. "They believe controlling the keys will allow them to reshape reality to their preference, a universe of darkness where they would reign supreme." Vega studied the small device she'd been entrusted with. The resonance key seemed to pulse slightly in her hand, as if responding to the proximity of the Voidborn. "You said this key needs to be delivered to something called a nexus point. Where exactly is that?" "Near within this nebula, that is why I came here." Commander Pascal's eyes narrowed. "You led them straight to us." "Not intentionally," Nyx communicated, distress evident in the mental impression. "My vessel was damaged escaping their outpost. I had no choice but to seek refuge." "It doesn't matter now," Vega interrupted. "What matters is what we do next." She turned to Nyx. "If we can get you to this nexus point, what happens then?" "The key will reset the harmonic balance. The Voidborn will be unable to access this sector for many cycles." "How long is a cycle?" Pascal asked. "What you would call centuries." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. If they could reach this nexus point, they might save not only themselves but countless other civilizations from Voidborn expansion. "The problem," Vega said finally, "is getting there with an armada breathing down our necks." Pascal nodded. "We need a diversion." "Sir," Communications Officer Willis called out, "we're receiving another transmission from the lead Voidborn vessel." "Put it through." The viewscreen flickered, revealing a figure that made several crew members gasp involuntarily. The Voidborn commander appeared humanoid in basic shape, but the resemblance ended there. Its skin was like the surface of an oil-slick, iridescent black that seemed to absorb light. Where eyes should have been, there were only smooth indentations, and what might have been a mouth was a vertical slit that didn't move as the creature spoke. "I am Sentinel Morrows of the Voidborn Collective," the figure stated, its voice resonating from somewhere deep within its body. "Your time for deliberation has expired. Surrender the Lumina and the artifact or be destroyed." Commander Pascal stepped forward, his posture straight and dignified. "I am Commander Dominic Pascal of the Terran Research Vessel Constellation. We were unaware of the significance of our guests when we offered them sanctuary. Perhaps we can discuss." "There is nothing to discuss," Morrows interrupted. "The Lumina has stolen what belongs to the Collective. Return what is ours and we may permit your vessel to depart." Vega noticed how the Sentinel referred to the key as belonging to the Voidborn. She glanced at Nyx, who was trembling slightly. "Lies," Nyx communicated privately to Vega. "The keys belong to no one. They are the fabric of reality itself." Pascal continued the negotiation, buying time as Vega's mind raced through possibilities. The Constellation wasn't a military vessel. It had minimal defensive capabilities and no weapons that would make even a dent in the Voidborn ships. What they did have, however, was the nebula. The swirling gases and dust particles created natural interference that might mask their signature if they could just get deep enough into it. "Commander," Vega whispered urgently, "I have an idea." While Pascal kept Sentinel Moros engaged in conversation, Vega outlined her plan. They would appear to surrender, allowing a small Voidborn craft to dock with the Constellation. Meanwhile, Nyx's repaired vessel, piloted by Vega, would launch from the opposite side of the ship, using the Constellation itself as cover before plunging into the densest part of the nebula. It's risky, Pascal acknowledged. The radiation levels in the core of the nebula are extreme. But the Voidborn ships are too large to follow, Vega countered. They'd have to send smaller vessels after us, which would give us a fighting chance. And the Constellation. Once we're away, you execute an emergency jump. The Voidborn will have to choose which of us to pursue. Pascal considered this for a long moment before nodding. Make it happen, Captain. The next 30 minutes were a blur of frantic preparation. Vega and Nyx returned to the hangar bay where the alien vessel waited. The repairs weren't perfect, but Nyx assured her it would be sufficient for their needs. How do I even pilot this thing? Vega asked as they climbed aboard. I will guide you, Nyx responded. The ship responds to neural patterns. It will recognize you as an extension of me. As Vega settled into the pilot's position, she felt an odd tingling at the base of her skull. The ship's interior illuminated with a soft blue glow, and symbols that reminded her of flowing water appeared on surfaces around her. Engineer Captain Reeves, Pascal's voice came through her comm unit, the Voidborn shuttle is approaching our main airlock. Prepare for launch on my mark. Understood, Commander, Vega replied, feeling sweat bead on her forehead despite the coolness of the cabin. It's been an honor serving with you. There was a brief pause before Pascal responded. The honor has been mine, Vega, good hunting. The moment the Voidborn shuttle connected with the Constellation's airlock, chaos erupted. The Constellation's engines fired at full power, executing a sharp turn that would temporarily blind the Voidborn fleet's sensors. Simultaneously, the hangar bay doors opened, and Nyx's vessel shot out into space. Vega felt rather than controlled their trajectory, the ship responding to her thoughts filtered through Nyx's guidance. They accelerated at a rate that should have crushed them both, yet somehow the vessel's internal environment remained stable. They've spotted us, Vega exclaimed as alarms blared through the neural interface. 3 smaller Voidborn vessels had detached from the fleet and were now in pursuit. Into the nebula, Nyx urged quickly. The nebula loomed before them, a swirling mass of gases illuminated by the radiation of newborn stars. Vega guided their ship straight into its heart, where the densest materials would provide the most cover. Behind them, the Voidborn pursuers followed, their sleek black ships cutting through the colorful gases like sharks through water. Energy weapons lanced out, missing their small craft by meters as Vega executed maneuvers that would have been impossible in a conventional vessel. Where exactly is this nexus point? Vega demanded as they dodged another attack. Ahead where the light and darkness meet. Vega had no idea what that meant until suddenly she saw it. At the very center of the nebula was a sphere of absolute darkness, a perfect void surrounded by swirling light. It was as if someone had cut a hole in the fabric of reality itself. That's it, that's the nexus point. Yes, we must reach the threshold. They were close now, less than a minute away at their current speed. But the Voidborn ships were closing the gap, their weapons finding their range. An energy beam struck their vessel's rear section, sending them into a spin. Vega fought for control as warning symbols flashed across her vision. We're hit, stabilizers failing. We need only reach the edge, Nyx insisted. Their mental voice strained with effort as they helped Vega compensate for the damage. The nexus point grew larger in their view, its perfect blackness somehow more substantial than the space around it. Just as they approached its periphery, another blast from the pursuing ships caught them, this time more directly. Systems failed throughout the vessel. Vega felt the neural connection waver and then snap entirely, leaving her piloting by instinct alone. We're not going to make it, she shouted as the ship began to break apart around them. Nyx moved with sudden determination, taking the resonance key from Vega's pocket. The balance must be restored. With what seemed like the last of their strength, Nyx wrapped their filaments around the key and pressed it into Vega's hands. Together, your mind is strong, focus on the nexus. Vega didn't understand, but she closed her eyes and concentrated on the image of the void they had been approaching. The key grew hot in her grip, pulsing with energy that seemed to flow through her body. When she opened her eyes again, everything had changed. The ship around them was dissolving into particles of light. The pursuing Voidborn vessels had frozen in place as if time itself had stopped, and the nexus point was expanding, reaching out to engulf them. You have done well, Nyx communicated, but their mental voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "What's happening?" Vega asked, watching in amazement as her own body began to shimmer with the same light that had consumed their vessel. "The key recognizes you, it has accepted you as a messenger." Before Vega could ask what that meant, the Nexus enveloped them completely. For a moment that felt like eternity, she experienced absolute silence and perfect peace. She saw the universe not as a collection of stars and planets, but as interconnected layers of reality, each vibrating at different frequencies that together created a cosmic harmony. And she understood finally what the resonance key truly was: not a tool or a weapon, but a tuning fork for reality itself. When awareness returned, Vega found herself floating in space, protected by a bubble of energy that emanated from the key in her hands. Nyx floated beside her, their copper skin now gleaming with an inner light that matched the filaments around their face. Around them, the nebula had been transformed. Where once there had been chaotic swirls of gas and dust, there was now a structured pattern, like a vast cosmic mandala centered on the nexus point. The Voidborn ships were retreating, their hulls seemingly damaged by the wave of energy that had emanated from the key. And in the distance, the constellation drifted safely, having executed its emergency jump and returned once the danger had passed. "The balance is restored," Nyx communicated, their mental voice now rich with new harmonics. "For now." "What happens next?" Vega asked, still trying to process everything she had experienced. "I must return to my people, and you have been changed, Vega Reeves, the key has marked you." Vega looked down at her hands and realized that faint patterns, similar to those on the key itself, now traced her skin like luminescent tattoos. "What does that mean?" "It means you are now part of something greater than yourself, a guardian of balance. There will be others like the Voidborn who seek to control the keys for their own purposes." "And I'm supposed to stop them?" Vega asked incredulously. Nyx's mental impression conveyed something like a smile. "Not alone, never alone." As if in response to these words, the constellation approached, a shuttle emerging from its bay to retrieve them. Commander Pascal's voice crackled through the comm system that still somehow functioned in Vega's suit. "Captain Reeves, do you copy? What in the name of all that's sacred just happened out there?" Vega looked at Nyx, then at the retreating Voidborn fleet, and finally at the glowing patterns on her skin. The universe had just become infinitely larger and more complex than she had ever imagined. "It's a long story, Commander," she replied, "and I think it's just beginning." The shuttle drew closer, and as Vega prepared to return to the familiar confines of the constellation, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. She had glimpsed the true nature of reality, had touched the cosmic harmony that bound all things together. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the other 6 resonance keys waited, their messengers yet to be found.